of the ways that I think the funding for this kind of project allows for a relationship between not just artists in an arts community or even people who are interested in art, but also people in the general public, is by creating objects that very clearly and compellingly tell the kinds of stories that might get overlooked by other kinds of funding, and that really relate to people where they are, because it is about their community and their stories.
It's interesting because to me, we tend to kind of live in our own, we tend to construct environments that we're safe in. And a lot of times that means like there's a certain familiarity, it becomes routine. But the idea is that you start to realize that there is a broader sense of place throughout the city that offer those same kind of things, but you just never think about it. And I think if we can see that as a community, us as Kansas Cityans, and see it happening here, we're not so removed from it. Our world is a little broader. We understand a little bit more than being in our own niches and in our own little cultural spaces.
To come to an artist and say, have you ever thought about doing this in your work? And we have money for you to do that in your work. But this time around, we're trying to make real, actual, new avenues in artists' work that they haven't explored before. We go and we do studio visits, and then we make public the things that we see. We show pictures and we talk briefly about what it is that we are doing. And so we are allowing the community to see the creative process at work, which is, it's kind of rare.
We, as a collaborative installation art performance that was staged in a downtown office space once inhabited by AT&T. The concept of the performance took the audience and performers out of a proscenium theater and sandwiched them in close proximity, placing the art, the performance, and the audience next to each other. One of the most beneficial aspects of the Rocket Grant was it allowed myself and the other artists to leverage a very unique space for the performance, which we received really graciously for a 6-month residency. The concept of the project was about how we can create intimacy through performance. Being a dancer and so often being on a stage, I never see the audience, and I wanted to grow the interest for dance in Kansas City through the structure of the performance. And this space at first seemed like the opposite of intimacy. It was an office space where people worked, they were in cubicles. You know, we imagined a pretty dreadful situation, but this opposition ended up actually heightening the intimacy of the performance concept. The small offices, the small cubicles became intimate settings where the audience sat only 3 or 4 feet away from the performers. They were also walked through the hallways by a guide who was in office attire. There was a lot of skewing or questioning of what was intentionality, what so the sets looked like things that could have actually been there, or maybe we put them there, and that was part of the fun of the environment. The working together and keeping harmony between all of the different aspects and different people was a huge process for me to learn more about the way other people outside of myself create, their purpose for creating, what's important to them, and how they interact with an audience. All of those aspects that go into being an artist really help to expand and shape my own vision of who I am and my own work. The Rocket Grant for me personally allowed me to try a really big project out. If I hadn't received that grant, it would have just remained a dream that I had. And I learned skills, experiences, things I will never do again and things I will do again. It sort of laid the groundwork for my integrity as an artist and my integrity as a director. And since then have really been able to just keep going forward.
My project is about envy, and it's called Envy in KC. And it explores the nature of envy among artists and institutions in Kansas City. It is a narrative, mostly, And I play the main character, who's an artist who's investigating envy. She ends up getting in fights with her friends, she lies to her therapist, but she also meets with some of the key arts leaders in the community. I actually not only opened up new relationships, but I actually had to make new relationships and expanded ones. I certainly called on lots of people I knew to be in this project, because there are quite a few actors in it. My studio's in Kansas City, but I live in Lawrence, and I've recruited my neighbors to be in this project. One of my neighbors is a 15-year-old girl, and her grandmother is also in it, as well as musicians I know in Kansas City who turned out to be really, really good. Having a rocket grant and getting one with really the prestige of this grant, I think made me feel more confident and kind of bold in approaching directors of museums and asking them, you don't know me, but would you look at my script and would you consider acting in this video? I think a project like this really gives artists a chance to do probably something they might not have done otherwise. Yes, there's some money with it, but it's more than the money. It's really the affirmation and the acknowledgement. And I think that makes us all a little braver. And I think when we're braver, we get to do work that, I hope is really more innovative. And I think there's always the ripple effect of that. In thinking about my proposal for the grant, I just thought, wow, I can really propose something that I've never done before, that's really out of the box. So I think that the Rocket Grant, not only the funding to those of us who actually get awarded, but the process of applying, it makes us all bold.
Plug Projects came together in Kansas City after artists got together and realized that they shared the interest in curating. We decided that Kansas City was, one, in need of an artist-run space, and also thought that the potential to build another space with new networks and new contacts would be valuable.
We conduct critique nights between exhibitions when there's nothing in the gallery, when we invite 3 local artists to bring work, and then we invite professionals from the art community to come and sort of contribute to the dialogue about the work, and the public is also invited.
One of the other aspects we have is a program we call Unplugged, which is where we take Kansas City artists and introduce them to other communities in neighboring cities or other national cities. We've curated exhibitions in St. Louis with Kansas City artists, where we establish a theme and then sort of gather up a group of artists who are, one, addressing that theme in different natures, different mediums, and then we travel that work to another city.
The Rocket Grant money, which went towards our programming budget at Plug. We're trying to budget the entire year and allocate a lot of this, the money that we got, towards bringing artists in from outside of the city. Whenever these artists are here, we would take them into the community and have studio visits. We would schedule very particular studio visits, which we thought would be beneficial for the artist involved. Our entire philosophy is to kind of put Kansas City forward. So the more we bring these people in and show them the side of us and the place that we, know and love, the more I think that gets out into the world.
I think the Rocket Grant distinguishes itself more in the manner of what community it is addressing. It is addressing the Kansas City community, but it's also focused a little bit more on, say, interactive projects, projects that are not necessarily focused towards artists who are just making their work in their studio. And for that reason, it is more so about community versus other granting programs. And we feel we've made a big contribution just in the amount of people it's touched, either through the critiques, our conduit programs, our openings, or people who are reading our blog from a distance, So without those things, that the Rocket Grant provided us a platform in which to make those things happen, a support which we are then using to extend this a little bit out into the world.
It's always fascinating who I meet who know nothing about the Rocket Grant. But I know that I've had many interesting conversations that were unexpected to a lot of my patrons, I think, and customers that come to the cart. I think it leaves them wondering really what perhaps the arts are, or what a creative production is supposed to be in culture right now. And I think they're kind of trying to learn.
Prior to getting the Rocket Grant, I really hadn't had very much or any media exposure. So getting the Rocket Grant, I was on public radio, interviewed by public radio. I did another interview with a online magazine based out of San Francisco, and then I had an opportunity to show the finished piece at a gallery in Oakland. So I had a lot of exposure and opportunities that I had never had before.
I think with the Rocket Grant also came the cachet of the Andy Warhol Foundation that I think really helped us out, just in terms of recognition and artists trusting us, to wanting to work with us without us being on the scene for that long. With Rocket Grant also came the support, that moral and also whatever else kind of support from the Charlotte Street Foundation or the Spencer Museum connection. You know, it's a bigger thing than just the name. There's a lot more attached to it.
The experimentation that the Rocket Grant has provided us is only going to help to push the entire arts community forward of what's possible, what art is, multidisciplinary interaction. Artists need time and space to experiment and fail and try and succeed. And without finances and funding, there's only a certain point that you can take that.
The Rocket Grant program in particular in Kansas City has really created a kind of community in and of itself. Also, I think that one of the things that Rocket Grants has really done in Kansas City is create a very earnest and serious conversation about what it means to be an arts community, and that has really helped to make Kansas City a place where it's easy to get interesting things done, and create a community of people who are really invested in, engaged in, and earnestly trying to make an arts community that works and that is fruitful both for artists and for members of the general community.